Hi, welcome to another episode of the TK Podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Alex, and for this episode, I'm joined by my co-host, Anushka. In this episode, we are talking about challenges of ageism in the workplace and what we can do to overcome it. Our special guest for this episode is Andy Coker, an account executive who's been at Microsoft for over 8 years. This is someone with a satchel of personal stories which will be valuable to many groups within our listeners. So, wherever you are, grab a notebook and a pen and enjoy the TK Podcast. Hi, welcome everybody. Welcome to the TK Podcast. This is the second episode that we are running, and you'll see that we have new people with us. So I'm joined today by Andy Coker. He's one of the extremely well-oiled people at Microsoft who's really made his way through Microsoft over his tenure. How many years has it been? About eight years in total?
Yeah, so 8.5 years now.
8.5 years.
I did another year as an intern a long time ago as well.
So lives and breathes the brand, which is fantastic. And also, not forgetting my co-host. I'm not going to do her introduction. I'll leave it to her.
Hi everyone, I'm Anushka, or what most people call me is Nush. I've been at Softcat for 21 years, so a bit of an old timer there, really, considering we're talking about ageism as well. I started at Softcat when we were only about 50 employees, and privileged to have gotten us to like 1,800 employees. And I look after employee engagement, diversity and inclusion, and also mental health at Softcat.
Oh, perfect.
Very broad.
And then you guys know me. I keep it short and sweet. Alex, works at SoftwareONE. Been there for about a year and a half now. I've worked in reseller IT industry previously, and yeah, that's the basis of me really. And we're all part of TK here, but myself and Nush. And yeah, really looking forward to bringing you this insert. And today we're looking to focus specifically around ageism and what that means for people in different parts of their career. What's nice about the people that we have on this podcast today is that everyone's at different points within their career, which means they'll have different stories that they'll be able to share and different views and different insights. And we're hoping that with that information, you're going to be able to take that and use that in your day-to-day life when it's going to be usable or reasonably usable at that time. So first and foremost, Andy, do you want to give a little bit more of an introduction to you and sort of how your work life started out and how you've kind of got to the position you're in now?
Yeah, sure, I'll give it a go and just shut me off if I start to ramble. So yeah, Andy Coker. I'm a senior client executive at Microsoft. In plain English, that means I work within the sales department, looking after the relationship with some of our key resale customers. A little bit about me generally. So I'm 31, so I'm kind of youngish still, I like to think. And in terms of my background, I was born in the UK, but to Ghanaian parents, and we moved back to Ghana when I was 3, lived out there for 4 years until I was 7, moved back to the UK, and I lived in a number of places until kind of 11, 12, where I settled in near Southend-on-Sea, so grew up in Essex. Went to university at Aston to study business and international relations. Wow. Joined Microsoft in 2011 as an intern. So I did a year-long placement and rejoined Microsoft in 2013 as a graduate, where I've been ever since. So that's a little bit of my kind of journey.
Oh,
amazing.
Okay. And could you say a little bit more about that internship? Because you would have come in at quite a young age into that internship. How was that experience? How did that feel for you?
Yeah, it was the first time I'd worked in the corporate world naturally, so it was very new. It was something that I'd sought out even when I was applying for university. I knew I wanted to work, ideally in technology, but also do a placement year. And it was a great internship. It still continues to be I think in the UK it's one of the best internships available that wins a number of awards. And if you picture a cohort of roughly 100 people working across the business in different disciplines, most of us moved down to Reading or London. So again, there was a really good community, lots of made friends for life. I've been, groomsman for some of the people I met on intern year.
Wow.
I've had some of them as my groomsmen as well. So it was a phenomenal experience, really great opportunity to, start your career in an organization which has so many different departments, elements, when, fundamentally, I still say I still don't know what I want to do when I grow up. And, certainly when I was 20, I didn't really have much of an idea. So starting at Microsoft and having that experience and breadth was really great.
Interesting. You say
Wow.
you didn't know what to do when you still, like you might not know what to do when you grow up. And it's interesting, like at that early age, how people are kind of fixated on picking the right job so early on, when actually there's so many different lifelong decisions that you're going to be making along the way that kind of really develop you and your career.
Yeah, no, definitely.
So I kind of want to step back into time, focusing on this internship again. So how old was you when you started that internship? Did you say, was it 20? Sorry.
Yeah, I was 20.
20. So you're quite young, just come out of uni, fresh-faced, not too much experience in the office world, and you step through the Microsoft doors and you're greeted by people who are generally older than you. What kind of feelings did you get when you was in there? Did you feel like there was some type of like imposter syndrome, like you shouldn't be where you should be, or did you sort of walk into it and think, you know what, I back myself, all of my experiences up to this point has set me up to be ready for the task at hand?
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, to be fair, the internship, I definitely felt imposter syndrome. It was a big company. Everybody's heard of Microsoft. It's quite a cool place to be. I'd say I felt much more imposter syndrome when I returned as a graduate in 2013. So as an intern, I was in an internal role, doing comms and events. And yes, I was working with a team that was younger than me and more experienced, but certainly everybody knew I was an intern, and the expectation was that I would be there to learn and grow and shape myself. As a graduate, I was in a customer facing role within support. And what that meant was that I was quite quickly customer facing. And that's where I started to really feel some imposter syndrome. In fact, I remember one of my first meetings with a customer being introduced, and even then, I was conscious about my age. I got on the train to Richmond, wore my best, suit, and, was worried about, how to show up. And even in that meeting, the colleague who I was picking up that particular customer from, had a bit of a rocky relationship with that customer. And, he made a comment around, and you handed me over to this guy. And it was very much this guy from a perspective of fresh-faced, I'm paying Microsoft a contract to deliver a service, and here's some kind of kid out of uni. So, there was definitely imposter syndrome there. And I think certainly internally, Microsoft has got a lot of early in career folk, a very established intern and graduate program, and even an apprentice program now. So being young within Microsoft, I haven't felt, like anything different or an anomaly. Certainly within a customer environment, that has been more the case, where I am and have been conscious of my age. Starting to fade now. Obviously, I'm a bit longer in the tooth. I'm a bit older, but certainly for a number of years, that was something that I was very, very conscious of.
And more importantly, did you solve that issue for the customer?
Sorry, I didn't catch that.
Sorry, I was saying, more importantly, did you solve that issue for the customer? Were you able to do well in that meeting?
Yeah, you know what, that customer experience taught me a lot. Things did get resolved. He was quite a fiery character generally, very straight talking and very direct. And we did build a relationship over time, and we did resolve some of the challenges that existed between, their organization and Microsoft. And I'm smiling because I remember, as our relationship went on, I remember trying to kind of upsell him a contract, and he kind of laughed at me and said, "Andy, don't ever go into sales." And I will always remember exactly where I was sat when he told me that, because again, it was at a time in my life where I was feeling, actually sales might be something I want to do. And I really kind of thought to myself, I'm going to, I will prove that I can. And actually I'm now in sales in that role as a discipline. So we did resolve it, but yeah, it kind of also gave me a bit of fire to to kind of prove something as well.
Amazing.
Wow. Yeah.
Did you at that stage think about, like you were talking about your age and I guess the level of experience at that stage in your career? Did race ever come into that mix at all?
Yeah, to be honest, my experience in Microsoft I've not had negative, certainly not overt negative experiences linked to my race. I'd say in terms of my time out with customers and the way I'm perceived and perhaps, the way I am conscious of my race, that's probably been more of a factor. So, there's a term called covering, or some people use the term double consciousness, where, if you step into a room, you immediately do a subconscious double take of who else is in the room, what their experience of somebody that looks like you is like. And actually that affects, the way that you potentially act or the way you do certain things. And, I've had times where I've thought, should I get my hair cut in a certain way, get cut too low before a certain meeting? Will I come across as, in a certain way, or, perpetuate a stereotype? Because unfortunately, as a young black male, there are potentially stereotypes that will be more quickly assigned to me than if I wasn't from that kind of, social category. So again, things like that have been a factor, but again, it's not necessarily slowed me down or held me back. It's little things like, I remember once I drove up to Leeds for a customer meeting, and a long journey, I'm going to put on my, my favorite music, or, my mates always give me stick for saying, this is my jam. I put on my jams. I was driving up to Leeds. I remember I got to the gate to kind of get let in, and I was still playing, my music, which was at that time, quite strong, heavy rap music. I remember thinking, I need to tone this down. I need to, come across in a certain way, and I'm in kind of work mode. And I think that kind of covering and, awareness of perception and not wanting to appear a certain way is something that has, been there. And speaking to other, young black men as well, it's something that, we're conscious of. And yeah, just something, again, it's not something that has necessarily slowed me down, but over time, it's something that has been a factor for sure.
Yeah. Andy,
I think it's
sorry, Alex, go on.
Sorry, go on.
I was just going to say, just for our audience members, Andy, I wondered if you could just give a real simple explanation of what you mean by covering and a definition.
Yeah, so it's, I guess, covering, I'd probably say that the term double consciousness is probably more, kind of sits more with me in terms of my experience. And it's that if you step into a room and you see people that potentially have not had a lot of experience with you, but you fit a stereotype visually, you may do a double take as to how to act and, how you be perceived. So you might downplay certain elements of your character or overplay other elements of your character to fit a certain stereotype or be seen or perceived in a certain way.
Yeah, thank you. I just thought it was important just to highlight that.
Sure.
I think it's quite interesting that you call it something different to what I would say it is, because I've had conversations with my peers and different people in the business, and I define it as surface acting. So you go into a room and instead of being this wholehearted person that you are, you sort of pick certain aspects to fit certain situations so that you can come across in a certain way. I think, and in the last episode that we did touch upon something quite similar. So it's interesting to see that there is a common rhetoric, especially from black males, to say that this is something that we've had to do. And I think even black females or multicultural females, and speaking on behalf of Nush here, there's a element where you have to go into a room and they put an expectation on you, even if you've not said anything or done anything yet. Yeah. So it's quite a difficult one. And the same thing rolls in with ageism as well. If you've come into a room and you're fresh-faced 2021 versus someone who's come in and they're 31, 32, automatically you think, oh, okay, 31, 32, they're probably going to be more senior or have more experience or have more knowledge, when that always doesn't seem to be the case. Do you think there's been scenarios within your career where people have sort of underestimated your value because of your age, for example?
Yeah, I mean, age for sure. I mean, I remember one colleague who joined the business and started working with me, and I recognized that he was questioning everything I would suggest, the way I wanted to approach things, despite me, having been in role for a little bit of time and, having a good grasp of how to execute on the role. And again, I could tell at the crux of it, it was because I was young, and he felt, because he'd been around for a while, he almost had to say the complete opposite view of what I was saying, and almost felt like he was trying to coach me and teach me, and at every opportunity, even though actually, as a team, I'm hugely respectful of other people's opinions, but also if I've been there kind of 6 years, I probably know a little bit of the way things work. So I've definitely had situations like that. I think as well, just going back to the point you were making before around people perceiving certain roles or projecting certain things. So again, when I've done reading and tried to learn about the female experience in the workplace and heard about people, for example, there'll be one woman in a room of 10 and there'll be a meeting, and the woman gets asked to take the notes and things like that, which are subtle but clearly sexist and coming from a place rooted in sexism. Again, I've found actually sometimes being a black male, I've had projections of certain things put onto me that haven't necessarily been negative. So routinely I'll be someone who people think is really confident or, in a certain kind of way. And, I'll be the one kind of, oh, Andy, you do this, or, oh yeah, you stand up and, you'll be confident. You're that guy, right? So again, it's just something that has been subtle, and actually being aware of it and trying to use that in a context that isn't a disadvantage, but maybe even sometimes helpful. Again, being somebody that, if I'm one of a few black faces in an office, I'm more easily recognizable. And again, I don't think that has necessarily been a bad thing, maybe even a good thing in my career so far. So again, it kind of cuts both ways, but it's some of those subtleties that you are conscious of and do occur.
And Nush, sort of a question for you, being the more wiser, trying to
thanks, Alex.
trying to pick the right choice of words here. The more wiser one in the room. Have you seen or has there been any examples in your career where you've been judged based on your age or your look or anything similar to that?
Yeah, I'd probably say when I first started at Softcat, so I actually started in a sales role as well when I was 21, so straight out of uni. And I think there was that kind of when you are seeing customers who are are more mature than you, they know their IT stuff as well. As a reseller, when you're trying to talk to them about different pieces of software or hardware to make their lives easier, I definitely think the age bit factored into it. And we used to have a guy called Ian who joined Softcat about a year or so after I had joined Softcat, and he came in as our Microsoft guru, our Microsoft specialist, and he was, I don't know, 15 years older than us, and had been in the industry for a lot longer than us as well. And when he came on board, we'd all want to take Ian out on customer meetings with us, particularly if we were, because we just wanted to add that maturity to that customer meeting. I didn't ever feel affected by my race, though. Interestingly, I didn't ever think, like the fact that I'm an ethnic minority is going to play a massive part in this. But I did feel more about that kind of being a woman and being a young woman being more prevalent, really, particularly when you're in a room full of men, white men normally as well. When you're going out to see customers, that felt a little bit more challenging. But yeah, never race at all. But the age bit definitely played on it until I'd probably been at Softcat for a good 5 or 6 years. I'd kind of built my career as a team leader. At that point, I was managing a team. I was a bit more known in Softcat at that point because I was sitting on the management team, and at that point, age didn't kind of really factor into it, I think. So once you start to build your credibility, that kind of age and also being a woman at that time didn't play a huge factor for me.
Yeah, no, that's interesting. And I know you mentioned a lot about sort of the start of your career with the position you're now in, where you're quite deeply entrenched with Softcat. What would you say are sort of the three advantages to your experiences and sort of people judging you from like just your status within the company?
I'd probably say like now it's definitely different for me. I sit on the leadership team. I'm one of 4 women who sit on the leadership team, and I'm the only ethnic minority as well on that leadership team. So if I'm honest, sometimes that plays a bit of a factor in my mind. I'm like, I still walk into a room and I'll still be the majority of my stakeholders, the majority of the people that I'm involved with on a day-to-day basis are white still, but I try not to let it be a factor too much. I mean, like my role now is different. So inherently I'm talking more about diversity. I can challenge those stakeholders more. I can speak to the CEO and the CFO and the MD and all of our directors more openly and challenge them about how it makes me feel sometimes as well. So it kind of brings it to the table a little bit more. And I don't know, part of me just thinks I remember like 10 years ago, I couldn't see anybody who looked like me. And whilst I was quite ambitious, I couldn't see anybody who looked like me in those senior positions. So I guess if my lasting legacy at Softcat, I mean, I've been there for 21 years, inevitably I will leave one day. If my lasting legacy can be that somebody else has been inspired to get into management or senior roles, and I will absolutely lift as I climb. I will definitely move women along in particular, and where I can do my bit in terms of making sure that there is more representation of ethnic minorities, I'll definitely do my bit there where I possibly can.
Okay. So, Andy, my question to you, what would be the 3 things that you would say to yourself just starting out at Microsoft? What would be, you think, the most valuable information you could give to yourself to equip you for success?
Great question. 3 things. I guess, I've seen certainly along the way that, hard work is a fundamental element of success. So, being focused and actually working really hard to learn your job, do some of the extra things that you're passionate about or that make a difference to the business. And, fundamentally, hard work is a key ingredient to any success. Definitely keep up hard work, even when there are distractions, even when it's difficult, even when you're lacking motivation because things aren't moving as fast as you want, etc. I'd say secondly, just be yourself. It's so cliche, it sounds a bit Disney, but
isn't it?
I think fundamentally, as I've gone on through my time at Microsoft, and I've been, I feel I've always been broadly myself, but even bringing more facets of my personality, character being to the fore. And again, it's quite multi-layered. So I've had feedback. So just taking a step back, both my parents are obviously Ghanaian. I grew up in a Ghanaian home, and in Ghanaian cultures and a lot of West African and broader cultures, there's a lot of deference towards your elders. Yeah. And actually coming into the workplace where suddenly I had, responsibility, and, people that were significantly older than me were also my peers, and I had to, square that circle. And I've always been someone who gets feedback, oh, you're really smiley, you're really polite. But actually that's also cut the other way. I've had people tell me, I'm not sure about putting you in this situation because you'd be too nice or too polite, or, you need to find your edge. Yeah. And actually, I think understanding who I am and how to not lose myself and lose that deference, which is natural from, my culture and my upbringing, and bringing that into the working environment and, bringing that to bear in the right way has been important. It has been a bit of a learning. But, equally for the business, I think, that's a good, if I, move on with the business and manage and lead, etc., that's something that I'll be keen to, impart, that actually don't just look at the color of someone's skin, look at their upbringing, look at their culture, look at what family means to them, look at what certain situations might, do to affect their decision making, and factor in those things into who they are and how that might kind of manifest itself in the way that they act. So that's a long-winded way of saying be yourself, even though, yourself might not be fully understood in the context of your upbringing by your peers and your managers. Third bit of advice. I mean, I think I've been at Microsoft a long time, and part of that is I've enjoyed my jobs. I've never had a bad manager. I've had some brilliant managers, and that's fortunate. But I've also got a lot of energy from some of the things that I've done outside of my day job. So whether it's been with the graduate committee when I was kind of coming through, or when, I played football pretty badly, I must add, but I played football with the football team throughout my time at Microsoft. I'm now part of the Embrace Employee Resource Group, one of the leads for that. And it's essentially the Embrace Employee Resource Group is focused on how we internally and externally support people from BAME backgrounds and make sure that we're increasing opportunity, raising aspirations, things I'm hugely passionate about, and being able to spend some of my time on those extracurricular activities has been a big part of why I feel so energized to kind of be around.
No, that's good, and I hope for some of our listeners they're taking notes on that section, and they're going to be able to take that into their workplace as well, because I think there's some really good nuggets of information in there. Nush, a question for you. First of all, I don't think the listeners are fully aware of the role that you play within Softcat. So if you could give some information around that, and then sort of dipping into the side when it comes to recruitment, just shedding some light on that process and how you try and keep that impartial, whether it's age, race, gender, and all of those things.
Yeah, I mean, like my role at Softcat is pretty broad. I'm really lucky to be able to look after look after the piece of the job that I do, which is about making sure that we can be an employer of choice, as I kind of put it. So when I look after anything related to employee engagement, it's really about how do our people feel about our organization, what keeps the people at Softcat, and from a culture perspective as well, is how have we continuously tried to improve that. So when I first started at Softcat, it was quite a laddie culture. Like I joined Softcat when the demographic was still really young. There was only 50 of us. We were all pretty up for it and socially going out and all that and stuff. And as the company's evolved, we've had to keep ourselves in check on that. So whilst the performance is great, the business model's great, we're still hiring amazing talent. From a diversity perspective, we've had to change some elements in terms of making sure that we've created that inclusive culture along the way. So yes, we're all really good mates. Yes, we have this family-centric culture, but at the same time, we've had to make sure that it is inclusive. And with that, I mean, diversify what we do on a day-to-day basis. Like not all of our team nights out need to involve alcohol, because people from different backgrounds don't always drink alcohol, and it's kind of just making sure that we're keeping ourselves like I said, being that employer of choice for people outside of that, what we would call like a great person that you'd want to go out for a drink with. We want to make sure that we're attracting all sorts of different diverse talent, which has meant we've had to change some of our recruitment processes. We've had to make sure that from a community perspective, we've had to keep ourselves in check. And Andy, you mentioned your Embrace network. Like Softcat has a similar network at in our organisation as well, which concentrates on racial equality and making sure that we creating that safe space, and we have a community for race, along with women in business and other different networks as well. And the younger generation coming through the door now don't just want a job. They don't want just the job and the salary. They want to come in and be a part of a community. And the better the environment we can create, which is saying that, you know, you've got a safe space, you've got a space where you can vocalize your opinions, because by vocalizing your opinions, you're changing our culture for the better. The more of that we can do as a company, the better. So that really does start with that attraction piece as well. So our company has to really speak volumes about that, so that as soon as people start, they know that they are embodying the values and they've got a place that they can be themselves because of the culture. I hope that kind of answers your question, Alex.
Yeah, that did extensively. No, that was impressive. What I wanted to focus in on was around the point you said about young people wanting it to be sort of like a home for them. What do you think are sort of the key things that you've had to implement in order to get Softcat prepared for that sort of age range coming into the business? And how has those changes affected those who are sort of on the other side, who've been at Softcat for a long period of time, maybe looking more towards retirement or something similar to that?
Yeah, like really good question, Alex. I mean, again, when I first started, I was 21, probably, you know, up for a party. I've since been at Softcat. I've got 2 children. I've got a 10-year-old and a 7-year-old. My life's really different. You know, Friday nights are all about PJs and a glass of wine and watching something like Top of the Pops on telly. It's you know, it's changed. And some people might call me a little bit sad for that, but you know, like everyone wants something different. And as an organization, like our average age is obviously getting older. So I think, like when I did the stats a couple of weeks ago, our average age is like about 29 and a half, which still might seem young to some organizations, but for the fact that Softcat has a business model which is about hiring young talent, you know, apprentices and graduates, to see that age going and creeping up is a really positive thing, because we do have lots of people sticking it out at Softcat. You know, there's not, I've been there 21 years, but there are a lot of people who have also been there for a long period of time. And one of the things that we've really focused on heavily, which has had a huge impact on our business, is our Softcat family network, and actually helping us diversify what we do there as well. So going back to kind of values and community, sharing this sense of, like, you know, everyone has different caring responsibilities. It's not just about looking after your children, but you'll have different responsibilities. I think, Andy, you mentioned about kind of being respectful to your elders. Part of our culture is also about looking after our elders as well, and that kind of is alien to some people. And I know that, you know, at a drop of a hat, if I have to go and look after my parents, I'm going to have to do that at some stage. So we've kind of created this culture that caring doesn't mean just children, it means looking after our broader family and embracing that as a company. So it's looking after our fellow colleagues as a family, looking after our family as in outside of work, but making it kind of normal as well. And I think that our family networks had a massive influence on how we've kind of focused on that moving forward as well.
Yeah, no, that sounds like Softcat are in a really good position to look after their people in the right way and give them the right support, which is fantastic. And I'm sure Microsoft and also SoftwareONE, we have the same framework set up to support our family, essentially, because it is family. You spend most of your time with them day to day. I know COVID right now means that we're all working from in front of a screen, but there was a time where we was all in each other's spaces, helping each other out and trying to optimize what we can achieve as a team. My question to both of you as a group is, we've got sort of the new generation coming in, and then I remember something quite funny. So I used to work in office shoes, and while I was working there, we had done this thing where it was like, oh, who's born when, and like someone was like 95, 98, 92, etc., etc.
I
And
love
then
how
one
you said
kid
all the
said they'd
90s there, Alex.
yeah, I mean it was a young it was a young workplace in general. But then we came round to one person and he said, "Oh, I'm born in 2001," and we all kind of went, "Oh wow, ain't heard that before." So I'm wondering, how do you think the workforce is going to change with sort of that age group starting to come into the workplace, that sort of Gen Z, especially with the fact that they're sort of born in this digital age and they've always had the internet, and they're relatively more educated when it comes to technology in general.
Yeah, I can give a bit of a layman's view. I mean, to be fair, I do, as part of the Embrace Employee Resource Group, the element that I lead is around our external partnerships. And through that, we deliver a number of programs, including work experience, mentoring programs, business challenges aimed at, students between 16 to 21. So over time, I've seen a number of things around that age group, which do seem quite key and conscious. So there's certainly a piece around the organization you work for being in line with your values. Yes, people are always going to want to work for somewhere that's going to pay the bills and where they can progress, granted, but equally organizations that have the right social output and impact are important, whether that's the ability to deliver social impact within the company, or the company's making a big splash in that space, but also if the company is doing the opposite and is actually seeing this a bit of a corporate beast, or just not really where you want to work, because you're going to tell your peers, right, I'm working here. And again, social image is quite a key thing now. Social media has changed. I remember when I was at uni, Facebook was just becoming a thing. So, makes me sound like a dinosaur now, right? But, the social media dynamic and, the place you work being part of your identity is quite key. I think the other piece is around feedback and progression. So as part of the work I did with the graduate community within Microsoft, we ran a number of surveys, and the things that mattered most to people were the ability to progress and also receiving regular feedback, which is something that is quite, if you look at statistics, Gen Zs do seem to want more regular feedback, more short, sharp recognition when smaller milestones are achieved. So for organizations to be aware of that and to make sure that they are allowing people to progress, but also regularly telling them when they're on track and also off track, because that was another thing. People are really keen to grow and hear what they're not doing well. And I think those are two things which are quite important as we start to bring on the next generation.
Yeah, really interesting, all that stuff that you just said there, Andy. I think like at Softcat, I always have a couple of funny intakes. And when I say funny intakes, our apprenticeship intakes always my funniest audience, because they won't have been alive when I first started at Softcat, which absolutely leaves them all in stitches, because they're just like, have no idea what it was like when you first started. And you saying Facebook wasn't around, was just launching when you were at uni. It wasn't even around when I was at uni, so nothing to do with social media was out there. So I'm definitely the dinosaur in this podcast. But yeah, like with the apprentices, it's just I love when I say hanging out with them, sounding like I'm too cool here, but I love working with them, because you just get such a different perspective. And going back to what you've just said there, Andy, about feedback and recognition, I absolutely agree with you. It's I think I remember when I was growing up, my parents used to be like, it's all about working hard. Don't worry about just kind of prove your worth and keep working hard. And I think, yes, that is still the case for the younger gen. But I probably just worked and worked and worked and just waited for the feedback, or thought that if I work hard enough, I will progress. And I'm sure that is still the case. But I feel like the younger gen probably ask for it a little bit more, which I love, because I love that they're wanting that feedback, they're wanting that recognition, and I love that they're ambitious at the same time. And the one thing that's probably helped us quite a bit is reverse mentoring, is understanding what people need at that, whether it's that age or that specific demographic, or it could be specific to a location, or it could be specific to their race or whatever, giving us that insight. Like, we're learning so much more stuff of that younger generation, so to speak. Absolutely vital and critical to our company as we grow and evolve as well. So I think, like, generally listening, learning, for me, that's kind of vital. That's part of what I campaign against at Softcat as well, is learning about different backgrounds, learning about different demographics. We've got to just keep continuously doing that to keep evolving what we've got in place at the moment.
Yeah, for sure. I agree with that. I definitely do agree with that. So I wanted to ask sort of a similar question, but more about the boomers, the baby boomers, because I think they're sort of coming up to that retirement age. I think the average is not average, or the typical age is around 66 now. So I'm just wondering, is there, or I know we've kind of covered it, what would be sort of 3 things you could tell a boomer to say, this is how you can be more accommodating to someone who's a millennial or Gen Z or Gen X within your workforce? Because like you just said, Nush, there's a lot of people who have just gone through work without getting much praise, and they're sort of head down and just drive through it. They might not understand the new workforce coming in are looking for that little bit of love. Do you think there's other areas that they may be able to help with, or any ways they can try and help the business progress in terms of understanding the new wave of people coming into the workplace?
Yeah, I think, like, for us, it's always making sure that you're not deliberately excluding people who are new. And when I say deliberately excluding, like, they're the value and the opinions and the perspectives that they come with is so important to evolving what you have today. Like, quite frankly, I won't be here in 20 years at Softcat to see what happens. But so it's kind of almost our duty to make sure that we're listening to that workforce, because Softcat will be around, and those people are going to be the ones that are running our organizations in years to come, or running, parts of our business. So we have to, like, listen and adapt and evolve, and not kind of, I have been in scenarios before where you think, oh, it's just a young person's view, so we're all experienced, we kind of know what we're doing. But I totally disagree with that. Yes, we come with experience, and I'm saying we because I'm probably the older person at Softcat. Is that, yes, we come with experience, yes, we've got some battle scars, yes, we've kind of been through some rocky times as an organization, and we've come to where we are today. But there's so much more to come. Like, I think in our previous podcast we said, technology is here to stay. It is going to evolve. It is going to be something completely funky in like 5, 10, 15 years time that I might not know enough about, whereas the younger gen will, and they're coming to us with kind of so much to give. So I think we have a duty to bring them in on that journey, so that they can, like I said, run this part of our business in future times. I don't know about what you think, Andy.
Yeah, no, it's interesting. I think, a lot of what you said is so true, but it almost puts too much of the onus on, potentially the older generations to adapt to the younger generations. And I think, me and people younger than me and even people older than me have a lot to learn from those that have trodden their career journey and actually are towards the end. If I think of some of the mentors and managers that I've had, the experience and perspective that they have from broader life, whether it's having kids or changing, jobs, companies, careers, those are things that I've not been through. And yes, the world might be a bit different, but it's not completely different, right? Those people still have wisdom. And I think that wisdom is something that shouldn't be underestimated, should still absolutely be respected. And actually it's probably around, making sure that people are integrating and you've got a good mix of different generations when you're making decisions, when you're designing products, and, ultimately when you're trying to either serve your customers, sell software, whatever you're trying to do as a business, it's probably going to work better if you've got those mix of perspectives. And I think it shouldn't just be a case of, those guys are kind of over and out. Let's make sure this is relevant for youngsters, because ultimately you're going to come across the demographic of the UK is changing. It's an aging population. Older people are still absolutely going to be spending money, making decisions, voting. We need to make sure it's relevant for everybody and make sure that everybody's views are coming into the same picture.
So totally agreed. Yeah, both of you have made great points there. Unfortunately, we've run out of time for our session. So first and foremost, thank you, Andy, for joining us and talking about age and your experiences and how that affects in the workplace. I'm hoping that our listeners have been able to take little sound bites from that and will be able to implement that in their day-to-day duties and speak to their peers and their colleagues about that. And same to you, Nush, as well. I think your vast experience and knowledge and being on the leadership team with Softcat has really given a lot of value to this session, and I know that people will be able to take that with them. So as usual, please follow us on socials. If you want to follow Andy, he's on LinkedIn, and we'll be able to share with you some other ways of getting in contact with him if you've got any questions or queries. Same with Nush as well. We will share those social media outlets so that you may be able to get in contact. It's been great that you've been able to give us your time today. If it's the start of your day, then have a great day. If it's the end, then I hope that you have a good rest and have spent this time well, taking notes and reflecting and learning and understanding more about the topics that we've been sharing today. And from TK and everyone at the pods, I just want to say thank you for listening, and we look forward to you listening on the next part of our podcast series. So take care, guys, and have a good day and have a good sleep or have a good night.
Thank you, Alex. Cheers. Bye.
Thanks for listening. We hope you enjoyed this episode and we look forward to hearing your thoughts. So please continue the dialogue on socials. To stay updated on when we release the next episode, follow us on LinkedIn and on Twitter at TC4RE. And don't forget to check our website at www.tcare.org for more information and content on today's topics.